Generally speaking, the way of instruction, the way the Talmud is structured, is completely counterintuitive, with the purpose to be to give us information. So the design is absolutely shocking. You can actually walk out of a sugya of Gemara and know less when you leave than when you began. And so I think it's very important to understand the intention and the design of the Gemara, and then we can develop a skill set that will enable us to unpack it in a way that's going to be coordinated and coherent with what the Gemara seems to be wanting to do. Good? Mm-hmm. Okay, so here we go. The Gemara was born out of the idea that we need to have an Oral Torah. But the problem is that the Oral Torah, in its pure, pristine state, was under the threat of extinction because of the kind of the diversity of struggles and the pain of exile that would befall the Jewish people. They understood that having a purely oral tradition would very easily get lost. So we had to find some way of maintaining it, yet not defeating the purpose of the nature of oral law, which is this vibrant, alive, dynamic engagement in the reality of our current position in life and geography, history and everything. So what they did is they created a written text which had to be unpacked orally. And it requires a discussion. There's not enough information contained on the page to actually get anywhere really kind of thorough and clear. And therefore, when we unpack it, we're invited to become a participant. This is not that the Gemara is instructing us, but the Gemara is collaborating with us to discover an understanding. And therefore, the way the Gemara is structured is that the Mishnah itself is the tip of an informational iceberg, where the vast majority of the information is beneath the text. The Gemara unpacks it in the following way. It deletes background information, which means you have to develop your memory. It leaves sentences incomplete, which means you have to develop your power of hypothesis and thinking, well, if I were to complete the sentence, what would I complete it with? And there are multiple ways of doing that, which opens up the power of dispute. The Gemara often doesn't describe or articulate its logic in the slightest way, which leaves things very open. We don't know what the logical parameters are. The Gemara very often uses language which is difficult to understand and sometimes simply just out of context. So therefore there's enormous amounts of chaos that arise in the Gemara, and in order for us to get some level of clarity, which is the opposite of the ultimate enemy of the Talmudic student, who happens to be No. Vagueness. Okay. That's what it is. Vagueness. In other words, kind of knowing what's going on is the most unsatisfying and unhelpful way of learning Gemara. You kind of know, but to have that crisp clarity, so that's the difference between enjoying your learning, feeling empowered, understanding what you're doing. And that's what we're going to be trying to do in our Shiur. So we begin with analysis of a Mishnah. And we're going to be starting with the Mishnah, which is on Kuf Yud Daled Amud Aleph at the bottom of the page. And the Mishnah is already the third in a series of Mishnahs which are introducing us into the Seder night. The Seder night begins with before the Seder night, and as the first Mishnah in the Perek tells us that you shouldn't eat. You shouldn't eat or fill yourself up before the Seder night because you need to develop an appetite for the matzah. And the Mishnah, which is just a bit above this Mishnah, discusses that first glass of wine, and there's a dispute between Beishan and Segal as to what's the order of the brachot on that first glass of wine. Is it first you make the Borei Paragofen and then Kiddush, or is it Kiddush and then Borei Paragofen? And that's explored in the previous sugya. Now we get to the next stage. So you've drunk the wine. You're at the Seder night. What happens next? And for some reason, the Mishnah traces the historical development of the Seder step by step. So this is what happens. I'm going to read through the Mishnah and see if we can make any sense of it. Heviu lefonov, they brought in front of him. Now it doesn't say, and I'm just going to emphasize the amount of information missing. We don't know who they are, and we don't know who we're bringing it in front of. Those two things are left unqualified. Metabel b'chazeres. You should, literally speaking, dip with lettuce ad shemagia, until you arrive leparperes apas. We know that the word pas means bread, or in this context matzah. The word parperes is a very difficult word to understand. It's certainly not referring to a specific thing, but it seems to be referring to a general category of things. Paperis is something like an enticement or an hors d'oeuvre which allows you to experience the following. In the case of food, the meal, it's going to whet your appetite, but it can also be used in the context of parparot lechochma, which is there's parparot lechochma means that there's an enticement to wisdom. It's like someone gives like a little kind of a prompt, a small little like push, and then opens up your eyes. So parperis apas seems to be something which opens up because of the bread. Then you have. Who knows what that means? I'm just translating over here. Heviu lefonov, they brought in front of him matzah. The first thing they brought in front of him, it seems this is a new, what happened to the initial, what was brought in front of him to begin with. It doesn't say who brought it, in front of whom it was brought, and what was brought. There's nothing written there about what is the subject of the sentence. Then the next thing is they bring in front of him matzah, then chazeres, which is lettuce for charesis. Charesis is a mixture between ground nuts, wine, and other kind of fruits which are mixed in, sometimes apples, to represent seemingly some of the foods which symbolically represent what happened in the slavery in Egypt. And this is somehow has a connotation of the straw and the cement that the Jews used to build the buildings that they were building in slavery. Ushnei tavshilim, and 2 cooked foods. And you should bring in the charesis even though it's not a mitzvah. Rabbi Lazar Reb Tzadok Omer, he says mitzvah, that the charesis is a mitzvah. Ubemikdash, and were you to be in the temple and offering up your paschal lamb in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, they would bring in front of him gufa shel Pesach, the body of the paschal lamb, Korban Pesach. So now you look at this Mishnah, and you notice yourself that the Mishnah, from beginning to end, is cryptic, completely veiled, and almost impossible to comprehend. Certainly not what is even the relevance of the Mishnah. We'll go through it. Listen to what the words say. They brought in front of him, he dips with lettuce. They brought in front of him matzah, charesis, chazeres, and 2 cooked foods. And even though one of those, which is charesis, is not a mitzvah, Rabbi Lazar was like, no, it's a mitzvah. And in the Beis Hamikdash, they brought in front of him the body of the Pesach. What are you talking about? What are you actually talking about? It's bizarre. It's bewildering. Now, the worst thing you could ever do when you're confronted with a bewildering Mishnah is then say, let me look at what everyone says about it. Because if you were to do that, you'd be defeating the intention of Rabbi Donasi when he wrote the Mishnah. What did he want you to do? He wanted you to start thinking, start hypothesizing, starting to unpack the Mishnah using your analytical powers. And then you have to do a lot of work. And probably you may not get there, but at least you need to try. But how do you do that? What's your method of analysis? What's the step-by-step approach? Well, let's begin in the beginning. Number 1, in any thinking process, the first thing you need to do is recognize, because the thinking process, cognitive activity, is constructed with 3 different phases. The thought's got 3 different phases: the way you think, the way you process information, the way I process information, and possibly even the way Tomer processes information. Did you trim your beard?
Yeah.
Like, what was going through your head?
The wife had enough.
He didn't process
Already.
Yeah.
He didn't process information correctly.
This is how can I perhaps enact what may have happened.
Please.
It was Erev Shabbos in the Ash home. There's a young couple looking at each other, and Mrs. Ash says to Mr. Ash, when are you going to get rid of that gigantic forest that's surrounding your otherwise shining countenance? To which Tom replies, but it makes me holy. When he feels the smart slap on his face, he recognizes holiness is going within marriage. Shalom Bayis is above everything. Off he went to the scissors. True? False?
Precisely.
No, but when you trim your beard, though, you feel the smack more.
Oh, you had protection beforehand. Good point. Okay, so the way we all think is the first time you think something. Binyamin, when you see someone, what's going to happen is, seeing that person, there's going to be a series of processing that you're going to be doing. But the processing takes place in stages. Number one is you have to see the person. If, for example, I go like this and you're all blurred, it means that I can't get an accurate perception of what your facial expression is, what you're really thinking. I can't actually see with clarity what's going on in your eyes, which is such a crucial point of conversation and communication. So what happens is, that's better. I have to have accurate visual input. If you say something, my auditory processing has to be correct. And very often tactile and other sensory processes have to be totally intact for me to then process correctly. If I, for example, have lost my sense of tactile sensation and I touch something and I'm not aware if it's hot or cold, I don't know how to react. The first stage of any thought process is input, understanding what's going on in order to process it. Then I have to think about what I need to do. So if I touch my hand and I feel hot, it's almost instinctive, but really what's happening is I touch something and it's hot, I withdraw my hand. So there's there's input. Information is coming to my head. It says, this is really hot. That's going to cause me damage. I remove my hand. That's a very, very, very lightning fast experience, but it actually can be subdivided into those three parts. And it's important to know that subdivision because when we analyze a text, we have to actually sequentially go through them consciously. The first stage, which is input, the second stage, which is processing, and the third stage, which is output. Corresponding to those three stages, there's a very structured protocol to the analysis of a Mishnah. Benny, are you ready for this? Okay. Generally speaking, historically, the participants in the Shiur have either been called Tom or Ben. So we're really kind of expanding our repertoire of names and people.
Letting more people in.
But even though you are Binyamin, right?
Correct.
So we keep there's Binyamin, Benny, Binyamin, Ben. I don't know what you guys are doing here, we should leave. Okay, I'm joking.
Or change your name.
Or change your name. Yeah, that's an option.
You can stay.
You can stay. Just change your name to a real name, like Ben. Okay, so now we have to go. So how do we do this? So we do what's called the 353 Mishnah analysis technique. The 353 Mishnah analysis techniques employs a structure investigation followed by the processing, which we call power questioning, and finally the paradigm shift. What happens? So I know this is a lot of information. Micha, are you following me so far though?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't paying attention too much until you started doing math, and then I wanted to lock in.
Oh, okay. So 353. There you go.
I'm here to listen to it. I'm not sure I agree with it, but I'm here to
That's 100%. You don't have to agree to anything I say. And if you don't agree, I'm happy to
discuss it afterwards.
No, get you out the Shiur. No, I'm joking. Okay, so the first thing you do is you have to figure out the structure. How do you do that? You ask yourself the following three questions. What are the parts? How many? Why in this order? What are the parts of the Mishnah? How many? Why in this order? So let's go through it. The first part of the Mishnah, Heviu lefanov. It sounds like it's setting up a scene. It's a scenario. That's part one. Part two is metabel b'chazeres ad shemagil paperes apas. Seems to be that when this happens, Heviu lefanov, we don't know what that is. We're working in the dark, but that seems to be the first part. The result, the ruling, is we have to dip with the lettuce until you get to this thing called the paperes apas, which you're not quite sure what that is. So there's a lot of unknowns. Now what's really important to understand is the power of the unanswered question. When you're going through a Mishnaic text, because it's written in such a cryptic fashion, you do not need to get understanding at first glance. In fact, it's unlikely you ever will. In order to do that, you have to recognize the notion of what's called restraint of impulsivity. The natural questioning mind likes to resolve problems on the spot. And therefore, when you have something unresolved, the inclination is to, well, let me find an answer. And one of the greatest assets to Gemara learning is developing the patience to suspend your question, not to ditch it, but to put on hold while you examine the structure. Because if you're trying to build a building, which is a structure, and you don't dig deep foundations so that everything is structurally correct in terms of the skeleton, any kind of additional accessories, decorations you put in could easily crumble. So you want to make sure that the structure is solid so that everything you build on thereafter is going to be solid as well. Go on, Ben.
Well, question about that in terms of the context of where the Mishnah is placed in the Gemara and how the Gemara should in a whole. Like, I have two questions. Is the Mishnah the order of the Mishnah, the way that the Mishnah is ordered in terms of like this is the first Mishnah listed in this tractate of.
Right.
Does that follow a very particular order, especially with the Mishnah, but also in the Gemara, right? You have Pesachim, right? Is there a particular reason why
100%.
this Mishnah is listed before this Mishnah?
100%.
Okay.
In other words, it's even a principle. The principle says, by implication, it's called Seder Mishnah. Now, this is an interesting point. There's a principle which says, Moshe, it says, Ein Seder Mishnah. There's a principle in Gemara that says there's no order to the Mishnah. So you'd mistakenly think, oh, well, the Mishnahs are random. The Tosafos explain that Ein Seder Mishnah is only between two separate tractates. That means if you have a Mishnah in one tractate and a Mishnah in a subsequent tractate, the Mishnah in the first tractate may have come after the Mishnah in the second tractate. But within a single tractate, there's a very fastidious attitude and relationship to order. Now the question is, so why isn't the entirety of Shas ordered? Why is it only within a single Masechta? So the answer to this question is a principle, fundamental principle of all education. And this is what Tosafos says. When Rabbi Segal, who compiled the Mishnah and made the order of Shas, when he was teaching his students, tractate by tractate, he would like to have done it in order. So why did he deviate from the order that he set up? The answer is, before he began learning the particular tractate, he'd say to his students, he'd say, what do you want to learn? What's interesting for you? Because there's nothing as irrelevant as an
Answer the question.
that hasn't been asked.
Right. Classic.
Right? So imagine you're sitting there, and now we've decided that the curriculum for you, and really the way that this year should be going, is I should have sat you all down and said, okay, what would you like to learn today? That's how really every year should begin. Because if there's not that intrinsic desire to understand the topic becomes irrelevant. So the way Rabbi Segal organized Shas was in one way, but the way he organized each and every Masechta was based on the will of the students.
Oh, interesting.
So therefore, between Masechtas is no order. Once they started learning a particular topic, then they had to stick to it. And therefore, in a single Masechta, each Mishnah is perfectly placed one after the other. But within two Masechtas, well, when it's talking about topics, we'll say, well, guys, what would you like to be studying today? Because if it's not interesting for you and it's not relevant to you, so then we're not going to be learning it.
Okay.
Crazy.
Part 2. Here it goes.
Part 2.
So where are we in the Masechta Pesachim?
So we're in the last chapter of the Masechta Pesachim. It's called Arba Pesachim. The Masechta begins with the beginning, which is discussing how do you get rid of the omits in your house.
Right, okay.
And then it goes all the way through, and it climaxes with the Seder night itself. And this is the entire 10th parak is devoted to that. And if you actually read through the Mishnaic in the 10th parak, what you'll find is a lot of them are almost a duplicate of what we say on the Haggadah.
So I have another question.
That's the last one for the day, okay?
Okay,
I'm joking.
is this Mishnah, the one that we read before, Mitulot, is that the first Mishnah referring to the Seder? Or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
The previous Mishnah referred to like the build up to the Seder.
Okay.
That you can't eat before it and that you need to have 4 cups.
Okay.
And then this one is, okay, now you got the first cup. And now we've done the first cup and now we've got the next stage of the Seder.
I see.
Geschmack.
Geschmack.
Geschmack? Do we get general Geschmack kind feedback going on over here?
Absolutely.
Okay. Geschmack. Okay, here we go.
Can I share a random teaching that always makes me feel good about that whole question?
I'm honored to hear it.
Rav Shlomo Karlbach has a teaching. No, Rav Shlomo Karlbach has a teaching. Like the whole night of Leil Seder is the night of questions, like lechem, farim,
She'oinim of Harbe Torah.
So the whole idea is questions, but you can only have questions if it comes to a place of kedusha. So it has to start with Kaddish. Why should Kaddish be first?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
But it can,
Beautiful.
because only if you're asking questions for
Right.
the Shem.
When you're asking questions in order to understand and not dismiss, the questions are valuable. When your question is just a way of dismissing something, that doesn't make any sense. So that doesn't work. Okay, Gavi, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, son.
It's okay, don't ever do that again. Now, Heviu Lefonov. So we're going through the Mishnah. Stage 1 is that they brought something in front of him. Now you're going to see, I'm not going to be explaining something, I'm just going to be getting the structure. Part 1. Part 2, Metabel Chazeres Ache Megillah Parperes Pas. Part 3, Haviu lefanov matzah v'chazeres v'chareses v'shnei tavshilim af al pi she'en chareses mitzvah. Part 3b, Reb Lazar b'tzadok oimer mitzvah. Part 4, ubemikdash hayu mevin lefanov gufa shel Pesach. So the structure of the Mishnah, there are 4 parts of the Mishnah. Now, it's very difficult to norm. Normally a Mishnah is divided between a scenario and a ruling. A person put a jug down in the public domain, scenario. Someone came and broke it, potter is exempt. That's scenario ruling. Over here, the very thing is ambiguous. What are you doing? They're bringing this in front of him, they're bringing that in front of him, or is it a din that things have to be brought? But even the way the Mishnah is phrased, it doesn't say, Mevi'in, this is what you should do. It describes it in a Lashon B'diavad. They brought it. Very bewildering. Very strange. Now what you'll find is Binyamin, Ben, covering most of the Shiur. What you'll find is that the way that you develop a connection to a particular sugya is not by learning it, but by questioning it. Very often, if you think about it, that the relationship, imagine Gavi, have you ever been lost in the desert? Not often. If you would be, and you have nothing to drink, and your throat is parched, and you come across an oasis, and in it there's a gushing spring with clear water, and you drink it down, how do you feel? Feel great. What happens if you have that same glass of water simply because you have to hydrate yourself and you're not thirsty? Parav, bland. What thirst is to water, questions are to wisdom. If you're thirsty, water's a bland thing. It doesn't taste like anything. If you're thirsty, it is the most delicious champagne of life. If you're not thirsty, it's bland. Same water, same temperature, same cup. It's dependent on your thirst. Persons that don't enjoy learning, so you're not thirsty. What do you mean not thirsty? It means you don't have questions. So you have to consciously cultivate the question in order to develop the passion, the understanding, the curiosity. And when you do that, your whole body starts to come alive. You become a curious person. And then instead of passively walking past life, you become engaged in it. There you go. Okay, so we're filled with questions over here.
What was the 4 things that we did? What's the first?
The first one is
not the first one. What's the 3 steps again?
The 3 steps. Breaking down the Mishnah. Category number 1 is defining the structure, which is 3 questions. What are the parts? How many? And why in this order? Okay, what are the parts? How many? And why in this order? So if we look at what are the parts over here, we've come up with 4 parts. And it seems as if the first part is a scenario. They brought something in front of him. The second part seems to be a ruling, what he should do under that situation. It seems to be that the third part sounds like a ruling, but the way it's phrased, it sounds like a case. Very, very strange. And in that third part, there's 2 opinions, which seem to be discussing charosis being a mitzvah or not. And then the fourth part, look at the fourth part. Look at how different the fourth part is. Ubemikdash, how you may vin in front of Gusha Pesach. In the mikdash, they used to bring in front of him. That's command form. That's what they used to do. Otherwise, they brought in front of him, which sounds like circumstantial. Otherwise, they brought may vin. They need to bring in front of him. So the language of the Mishnah, it's a phrase in the past tense. I would have preferred to phrase it in the present tense. But that's what we're going to.
What's the third thing? Defining the structure. What are the parts, and what's the third thing?
Okay,
I
so
have it right here if you want to look at it.
Name of it, please.
The name?
Okay, so
Category.
Meaning it's like this for every single Mishnah, right?
like this for every single
So
Mishnah.
what is it? Defining the
Okay,
structure.
1
What are
second.
the
So
parts and threes.
no, so the first part, the first category, major category, is defining the structure. Okay?
Yeah.
Underneath that, there are 3 questions. What are the parts? How many? Why in this order? Okay, those are the first 3 questions. What are the parts? How many? Why in this order? The second category is processing. Underneath that category, there are 5 questions we need to ask ourselves. Okay? These 5 questions go as follows. Number 1, details. Notice the details of the Mishnah. Is there anything strange or extra? And if so, why? Details. After details, you're going to illustration. Illustration is create a vivid picture in your mind's eye as to what exactly occurred so you can see it in your head. That's the second part of power question, of processing. Third part is inference. Is there anything that can be inferred from the text of the Mishnah? Zugesund. Inference. The fourth part is principle. What is the underlying concept that the Mishnah illustrates? The fifth part is source. What is the source of the Mishnah? Is it rabbinic of origin? Is it Doraisa from the Torah of origin? If it's rabbinic, is it a gezeira, a decree? Is it an enactment, a takona? If it's Doraisa, is it a pasuk? Is it a logic? Is it halacha l'Moshe Messina? Okay, once you've done that's in the middle, so that's 3 under structure, 5 underneath processing, and another 3 underneath output. And the 3 underneath output are, what would I have thought without the Mishnah? Number 1. Number 2, why would I have thought that? Number 3, why did the Tana reject my thinking to say his own? And that's a 3-5-3 Mishnah analysis technique. You take this analysis technique and you apply it to every Mishnah, you will be able to unravel.
Show me a recording of it, just
Yeah, don't worry. Okay?
And every single Mishnah is always like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can probably apply this rule to every single Mishnah you come across.
Nice.
Amazing.
Good learning skill, thank you.
My pleasure. That's what I'm after. Okay, good. So now we divide the Mishnah into constituent parts, and we've described them. We're saying already that we begin with a case, followed by a ruling, followed by something which is ambiguous if it's a case or a ruling, and then we have a final, very clear ruling in the last part of the Mishnah, which is in the base Mishnah. This is what they used to do. They used to bring in front of the person at this stage, just after he had the wine, they used to bring in the body of the actual Paschal lamb itself, obviously after it had been roasted. Good? Great. So now let's go on to the next stage, which is the analysis. Until then, that's the structure. Now let's analyze it. And let's look for anything in the Mishnah which is strange or extra. Do you notice anything, Gavi, in the Mishnah which is strange or extra? Does anyone, it's not only Gavi, does anyone notice anything strange or extra?
It's just saying that something about a mitzvah and so it's not.
It seems pretty random to include the Beis Hamikdash Gufo Shel Pesach because we're talking about the Seder now. All of a sudden we're zoomed into what we give to as an offering on Pesach to the Beis Hamikdash.
Good question. Not really, because a very important part of the Seder when you were in the temple times was the actual eating of the Korban Pesach at the Seder. That's deducted, so thank you. So actually now that you got to the stage you've had the wine, if you would be in the Beis HaMikdash, the next thing you need to do is have the Pesach brought into you. Right. Just like you bring in the matzahs and everything else, bring in the body of the Korban Pesach, even though you're not going to eat it right now,
right?
But it needs to be brought in.
I guess what's random is the order of that, of listing that, because it's not talking about the order of when you eat the Paschal lamb, it's just talking about the order of when you eat these other...
Not even. One of the most bewildering things about this Mishnah, even though Gavi didn't pick up onto it, is the Mishnah seemingly is telling me very little. It's not telling me what to do. The only thing it's telling me what we should do is we have to do this chazeres, which seems to be a lettuce, which seems to be what we use for maror. So it means they should eat maror, which is very difficult, because we haven't said Agoda, we haven't had matzah. The entire Mishnah is just one big strangeness. What are you teaching me? You're just telling me this is what happened. It comes out, seemingly, that there's some kind of halachic requirement to to put things in front of the person. Meaning, the Seder is not only about saying things, making Kiddush, saying the Haggadah. The Seder is also about bringing things in front of you, having things present. There's some kind of experience in the Seder that needs things to be brought in front of you, then taken away, then brought again. And that's relevant. And it's not only relevant the bringing in, but each thing's got its status. So you bring it in. So the Mishnah says, okay, well, you bring in the matzah, you bring in the maro, you bring in the charoises, you bring in the 2 cooked foods, whichever those 2 cooked foods are. The Gemara says, whoa, but why are you bringing in the charoises? It's not a mitzvah. Well, what is this? There seems to be some implication that only things which are mitzvahs can be brought in. So there has to be some kind of presentation. That's a very strange thing. Presentation. That the Seder's got a component of presenting. Just like to welcome Ben to our shiur, in case we are running out of Bens. Got another one.
Okay.
Do you understand? It's very strange. It's very strange. Now, what I want to point out, Gavi, the fact that you weren't bothered by saying in the Mishnah is terrible. It's awful. When you're leaving. No. Okay, so in other words, this is like increasing. Do you see I'm cultivating the bewilderment. It's called cultivating the timya. You have to develop the question until things become so like glaringly difficult. And then that switches on the engine to try to resolve something. That opens up the sugya. Until you've had the difficulty, the sugya is dead, it's closed. So now I've got these things. Placement. Oh, placement's a big issue. So now they put in front of him. Now think about this. What do we bring in front of him? So what do you bring in front of him? We don't know. But it must have had chazeres on it. Otherwise you couldn't have used it. So you brought something with chazeres. So what is it that you brought? I imagine some kind of board perhaps. You have to remember that in those times they never had a big table like us. People used to recline on couches, a chaise lounge, and they used to have miniature tables brought in front of them. So that means the table that's spoken about in relation to the Seder was not this big, gigantic piece of furniture. It was a small, removable item that could be easily removed and brought in. So it sounds as if he's just made Kiddush. So he's lying down, he's reclining on his chaise lounge, and now they bring in something, and the something must have chazeres on it, okay?
What is chazeres?
Chazeres is lettuce. It's lettuce, but it's a thing that we use for maror. So it must have some kind of lettuce on it. So they brought in something with lettuce on it, but then what happens next, Gavi? Do you know what happens next? It says, after they say that, it says, he has to metabel chazeres actually get a parabes, which seems to make some kind of time, or some type of order. You didn't need to do this before doing that. There's something called paperes apas, which is along the lines of hors d'oeuvre, some kind of hors d'oeuvre, something which stimulates my eating, and that thing is going to be after this thing. So I have to eat this tomorrow before that kind of thing. What is that thing? I don't know. But I have to do this before that. And then there's another hevi lefanov. So now they're bringing something else. So what happened? If we're talking about that they're bringing a table in and out, it means that between him finish off eating and the next stage, they took it away. They must have taken it away. And now they bring it back again. So then why are you taking away, bringing it back, taking it away? What is this? We're playing some kind of game? And the answer, in truth, is yes. We're playing a game. Because remember, they're one of the most important components of the Seder night.
Questions.
These questions. And who do we want to ask the questions? Ben Katzenstein, the kids. And what do kids get excited about? Kids love playing games. So a lot of the Seder night is about how you can engage and stimulate the interest of kids. And you do funny things. You literally do funny things. You do things that are odd. And the kids are, whoa, what you doing? And then they'll say, and now they engage because they asked a question. And the pinnacle of the Jewish educational year, this is the core. Why? Because this is a point in a year that's designated to the transmission of our faith to the next generation. It's creating a live experience of the most emblematic process that ever occurred to the Jewish people. You ask, and Ben Gurion said this in the United Nations in order to try to win them over to give out the partition plan. Ben Gurion said, if you ask any American, and I will now because there may be Americans in the room, what date did the Mayflower leave the shores of England? Ben's an expert in history, but he doesn't know this.
I don't know.
No one knows that, right? No one knows that. What clothes were they wearing? No one knows that. What food did they have on the ship? No one knows that. What day did the Jews leave Egypt?
On the 15th of Nisan.
Right? What were they eating?
Matzah.
Matzah. How are they dressed? Were they like ordered, or they have to run out in a hurry?
Run out in a hurry.
That is a piece of information that is 3,000 years old. That's as old as the pyramids, and it's fresh in your mind.
Oh, nice.
And until recently, that was true of every single Jew that was alive in the world. Unfortunately, there's been a tremendous amount of, assimilation. But until there was a fact of Jews in Pesach, of course. So Ben Gurion said, and you'd ask those people, and where are you going? So we're going to the promised land. And isn't it incredible that 3,000 years later, that's why we're sitting here. That's why we're sitting, because we didn't forget. We didn't forget. So you've got one feature where that becomes the point of that's the link in the chain to give this over to the next generation. Many people, the Seder night is one of their most profound memories from their childhood. Profound. And at that point in time that you bequeath to the next generation the living, vibrant, dynamic existence of the Jewish people that's eternal. And it's based on this exodus from Egypt that we make it real. So here we go. So we've designed this educational experience, and it's an experience. It involves all the senses. Sound, and you eat, you feel it. Well, how do you tell a person about the bitterness of savoring? Taste it in the food. That's crazy. The Charoi says, it looks like cement. Visual. Kinesthetic. In many customs in the Seder, people put the matzah over their shoulder and they walk around the table. You're living it. Because you have to recognize, Ben. You have to recognize that the way that we internalize things is not through knowledge, it's through experience. So now, that gives a bit of a background. Maybe that's why it's relevant. Maybe that's why it's good that they bring it in front and they take it away and they bring it in front and you got all these different things. And you do. So if that's true, I look at the Mishnah like this. Part one is they brought something in front of them. I'm going to take a stab. There must be a table with something on it. I'm going to take a stab that the something on it must be this moro, this lettuce. And the halach is, and the word metabel means you dip. And we're going to so you dip the chares, the chazeres, you dip the lettuce. We have to figure out what you're dipping it into and why are you dipping it. And we'll have to explore that. That's an unknown. And we don't know what it means, but we know that this is done before that. So whatever paperasat says, which sounds like an ador, what does that mean? I don't know. But you do that before this. And then, I imagine you took it away and you bring it back. Now you bring it back, and now it seems it's got everything on it. It's got matzah, it's got chazeres, which is maror, and then it's got this thing charoises. So why is it called charoises? It seemingly this is the mitzvah table. And then you put this random thing on it. Charoises is a nice thing. It's a remembrance. Does it say anywhere in the Torah you should eat charoises? Just scan the Torah briefly for me. No, nowhere. So what's it doing there? Right? Charoises. And Shnei Tavshilim. We've got these two cooked foods, which we've got theories about those two cooked foods, but the Gemara mentions in a very, very veiled fashion. Af al pisha and charoises mitzvah, and we don't care. We put the charoises there even though it's not a mitzvah. Why? If it's not a mitzvah, what's it doing there? Why do we need it? If it's not a mitzvah, why is it there? And Rabbi Segal says, no, it is a mitzvah. What's the machlokes based on?
Why? Is it a mitzvah or is it not a mitzvah?
Right, but why would it be and why wouldn't it be? Meaning, does it say it in the Torah? The Rabbanan enacted? What is it? What would be the basis for it? Right? Good. And then the last thing is in the Mikdash they used to bring out the Gufa Shel Pesach. Good? Okay, so that's called tilling the soil of our minds so we can start to find there's some kind of mental landscape within we can operate. Just before we get Ben's question, Tomer, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Sha'al Bini, Sha'al.
I'm still struggling with the reading about Havirifana Metaba because
Because you're not putting enough of a punctuation mark. Do it like this. Havirifanav.
dot.
Dot, dot, dot. Metaba b'chazeres. We don't know what they brought in front of him. We're suggesting maybe it's a table. And then once that's in front of you, this is what you do with it.
How do you know at any point where to put a comma?
Excellent question. A lot of it's based on experience, but very often it's initially the repeated reading of the Mishnah until you develop a sense of sentences not making sense unless you punctuate them in a particular way. In fact, one of the recommended things that the Mefarshim say you should do when you learn a Mishnah for the first time is to read it through loud at least 4 times, because the punctuation is very difficult to actually decipher. Ben.
Okay, I have 2 questions. This is a reach, I guess, but is it possible that the first section of the Mishnah, the Havei, the Haveyu Lefanav Metavel Hazeret Ad Shemagia Lepapet, is that basically the entire order of what they're describing, and then everything else is details of that order, or is it that like now this is actually like, because like I mean yes, we don't know what lepaperet hapet is, but like if hapet is bread, why are we eating bread?
Mat is bread.
Mat is bread. Oh, so what is pat? Hapat? We don't know yet.
Well, it must be matzah. But we don't know what the paperis is.
Right. But it uses 2 different words, hapet and matzah.
That's a good point.
Right.
Excellent.
So I'm wondering if the second section is like, okay, haveo lefanav.
It's like a detail. You mean it's saying the same thing again and it's just going over it. This was a principle and now this is actually what happened.
Right, and then it goes even further and it says now, okay, but what is this chazer? What is this charoset, right? And then Rab Tzadok says, well, it's a mitzvah, but then. Right, no, it's even though the Mishnah is saying it's not a mitzvah. But
the first Tanya says not, and Rabbi Tzadok answers it, argues and says it is.
Right. So I'm just curious if that's like if it's almost
good.
like the Mishnah's Gemara the first section.
Excellent. Let's wait and see.
Okay.
Excellent. Good. Okay, so I feel we've done a little bit of due diligence. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do now is just briefly let's start to examine some of the Rashbams. Even though normally the commentator on the inside of the Gemara next to the spine of the book is Rashi, over here it's the Rashbam. You can see in the middle of the side text it says Rashbam, who is a grandchild of Rashi Reb Shmuel ben Meir. And let's see what he says and how it may answer our questions. So the first Rashbam is located in the Mishnah. If you look at what I like to do is put one finger on the Mishnah and one finger on the Rashbam. And we say the words Ha Yerakos Achash Yibirech Layain. So now the Rashbam fills in the missing words. What did they bring up in front of him? He doesn't say like I said, the table. He says they bring in front of him the vegetables.
Where are you talking about? Where is this?
Down. Yeah. Okay, so it's located like really near the bottom of the page. The second last wide-ish line before the big wide lines. They brought in front of him the vegetables after he made a bracha on the yain. Now, what's left cryptic in the Rashbam is the fact that what vegetables are we talking about? So I'm going to cause you to, like, at this point in time, I'm going to break some rules and do things like out of order. Let's look at the Tosafos on the page. It appears on the left-hand side of the page. Haviu Lefanov. It is the 4th Tosafos. Haviu Lefanov. Good. You follow me in that Tosafos? Pirish Rashbam. Says the Rashbam, Yerakos, the vegetables. Says Tosafos, Ve'ein nireh. That doesn't seem right to me. That doesn't make sense. Midalo katani behedya. From the fact that the Tana of the Mishnah didn't teach explicitly, Heviu lefanov chazeres kediktani besamuch heviu lefanov matzah. Says the Tosafos, ve'ein nireh. That doesn't seem to be the correct pshat. He questions the Rashbam. Why doesn't that seem to be the correct pshat? He says because as follows: Midaloi ketani behedya, from the fact that the first part of the Mishnah doesn't state explicitly the words, open inverted commas, quotation marks, heviu lefanov chazeres, close them, from the fact it doesn't use the word chazeres, and Kediktani, as it does in the latter clause, Kediktani b'samach, as it does immediately afterwards. In other words, we have it going on immediately afterwards. What does it say? It says, Heviu lefanov matzah. It says explicitly what we bring in front of him. So it says, if this first clause was referring to bringing in front of him the lettuce, it should state it explicitly like it does in the second clause. In the second clause it says, Heviu lefanov matzah v'chazeres v'chareises, correct? It tells you what you bring in front of him. Over here it just says, Heviu lefanov, and it doesn't tell you what. So if it's referring to the vegetables, it should state explicitly what it's bringing in front of him. And therefore, Tosafos gives, so far, there's two parts to Tosafos. Number one is
Isn't it just starting in the order of the Pesach Seder? That's why it's bringing the vegetables first, because we know that we eat the vegetables before we eat the matzah or anything else.
Okay, excellent. So we actually, this is where we do it because of this Mishnah. Right?
No,
So this is like, so you know it because this Mishnah, we've already understood this Mishnah. Right, good, okay? Okay, so again, part one of Tosafos, Pirush Rashbam, Yerakis. So the Rashbam says that's referring to vegetables. Part one. Part two of Tosafos is a dismissal of the Rashbam, questioning it. Ve'ein nireh, that doesn't seem to be the pshat, and he proves it from the fact. From the fact that it doesn't describe explicitly that we brought in front of him letters, as it does say nearby. And what does it say nearby? Opening quotation mark. It says, matzah, close them. So it says that when we need to make explicit about what we bring in front of him, you see from the latter part of the Mishnah that we say it. And therefore, first part is a quote to the Rashbam, second part a kasha, third part, Venira begins a resolution, a different understanding. Venira kepirish rach. Says the Tosafos, I would appear to say not like the Rashbam says, but like the explanation of Rabbeinu Chananel. The rach is an abbreviation for Rabbeinu Chananel, one of the early Rishonim. Heviu lefanov shulchan. What did they bring in front of him? They brought the table. Shahara ein mevina shulchan ad achar kiddush, because they're only bringing the table after kiddush been made. Val ashulchan munach hachazeres, and on the shulchan is resting the lettuce. Okay? So now we have a dispute. Now this is great. Let me ask you a question.
Doesn't say anything about the kiddush in the Mishnah.
No, well, that was the previous Mishnah. That was the previous Mishnah. Okay, so let me ask you something. Binyamin.
Everyone looks.
Binyamin Gordon. How are you this morning? Great. I love the way you're manning up that stand. Fantastic. Binyamin. Let me ask you a question. What are the two ways of learning the first line of the Mishnah? According to the Rashbam, what is the Mishnah saying?
According to the Rashbam, saying that they brought before him vegetables.
And then you should eat the chazeres. According to Tosafos, what's the Mishnah saying? Shulchan. So now it comes out that if you go into the world and into the mind of the Rashbam, the Mishnah says A. If you go into the world in the mind of Tosafos, the Mishnah says B. Well, I'd like to make a general point that when you have a Mishnah and you have a divergent opinions about the Mishnah, it's not like you have a Mishnah standalone and then commentator A, commentator B. It's like you have Mishnah A, Mishnah B. That in the Rashbam's Mishnah, it says vegetables. In Tosafos' Mishnah, it says shulchan. That's step one. So understanding that the Meforshim, both the Amoraim and the Rishonim, are not extra-textual, they're intratextual. They weaved into the tapestry, woven into the tapestry of the Gemara. And they have to be read inside, not outside. They're inside, they're not outside. They're inside, not outside. Profound. Number two, you start to see that if I ask you a question, and I say to you, the Tana of the Mishnah, when he said Havir Lefanov, was he referring to Yurakos like the Rashbam, vegetables, or was he referring to Shulchan like Tosafos? Which one was he referring to? So you have to say, well, if you're in the world of Tosafos, this. If you're in the world of Rashbam, in other words, the minute that the Mishnah is stated, it now becomes its own entity and it becomes open for diverse interpretation. And all those interpretations, if they're thorough and true, are correct simultaneously. That the perspective, the way we look at reality, is way more like quantum reality and not like linear reality. We don't look at the world as a Newtonian physics, but more as quantum physics. In Newtonian physics, there's only one path. In quantum physics, it depends on the intention of the observer. It could be this, it could be that. Both are there. Depends what you are.